The wind howled like a wounded animal across the Colorado plains, and Xavier Atwood knew that staying out in this blizzard meant certain death for anyone fool enough to be caught in it. He urged his mare forward through the swirling white darkness, squinting against the ice that pelted his face like tiny needles, when he heard something that made him pull hard on the reins. A voice, faint and desperate, calling for help through the storm. Xavier hesitated for only a moment before turning his horse toward the sound, his instincts as a cattleman warring with his instincts as a decent human being. And decency won out as it always did with him. He found them huddled against an overturned wagon, two young women clinging to each other for warmth, their lips already turning blue despite the thick shawls wrapped around their shoulders. Xavier dismounted quickly and moved toward them, his boots crunching through the snow that was already knee-deep and getting deeper by the minute. "Can you stand?" he shouted over the wind. The first girl looked up at him with eyes the color of summer grass, wide with fear and cold. "We can try," she managed through chattering teeth. "My sister," the second girl said, and Xavier realized with a start that they were identical mirror images of each other despite the terror etched differently on their faces. She twisted her ankle when the wagon tipped. Xavier did not waste time with more questions. He could see the situation clearly enough. Their horse was gone, probably spooked and run off into the storm, and the wagon was damaged beyond any quick repair. They would freeze to death within the hour if he left them here. "There is a lined shack about a mile north," he said, making his decision. "I know these plains like the back of my hand, storm or not. Can you ride together?" the first girl asked. "No choice," Xavier said. He helped the one with the injured ankle first, lifting her onto his mare with more gentleness than his rough appearance might suggest. The horse, a steady paint named Molly, stood patient despite the wind trying to push her sideways. Then he helped the second girl up behind her sister. "Hold tight to each other," he instructed, then grabbed Molly's reins and began leading her through the blizzard on foot. The journey took twice as long as it should have. Xavier kept one hand on Molly's bridle and the other stretched out in front of him, feeling his way through the white wall of snow. He had worked these rangelands for 6 years, ever since he turned 20, and he trusted his sense of direction even when he could not see 5 feet ahead. The girls on his horse were silent except for their labored breathing, and he hoped they would last until they reached shelter. When the dark shape of the lined shack finally emerged from the storm, Xavier felt relief flood through his frozen limbs. He led Molly right up to the door, then helped both girls down. The one with the hurt ankle stumbled when her feet hit the ground and he caught her before she fell. "Easy now," he said. "Let us get inside." The shack was small, barely more than 4 walls and a roof, but it had a pot-bellied stove and a stack of firewood that Xavier kept stocked for emergencies just like this. He got the girls inside first, then went back out to tend to Molly, leading her into the small lean-to attached to the shack where she would at least have some protection from the wind. When he came back inside, the girls were sitting close together on the single cot, still shivering violently. Xavier went immediately to the stove and began building a fire, his cold fingers clumsy with the matches. The third one finally caught, and he coaxed the flames to life with practiced patience. "Get those wet things off," he said without turning around. "There are blankets in the chest over there. Wrap up in them before you catch your death." He heard them moving behind him, the rustle of wet fabric being removed. Xavier focused on the fire, feeding it carefully until it began throwing real heat into the small space. Only when he was satisfied that it would keep burning did he turn around. The girls had indeed wrapped themselves in blankets, their wet dresses hung over the backs of the 2 rough chairs to dry. They looked slightly less blue now, though still pale and shaking. In the firelight, Xavier got his first real look at them. They were beautiful, even half frozen and scared. Identical twins with long, dark hair that hung in wet tangles past their shoulders, delicate features, and those striking green eyes. He judged them to be around 19 or 20 years old enough to be traveling but young enough to look vulnerable huddled together like that. "Thank you," the first one said. Her voice was soft but steady now that they were out of the wind. "You saved our lives." "Cannot leave people to die in a blizzard," Xavier said gruffly. He moved to the small shelf where he kept supplies and found a tin of coffee and some hardtack. "Not much, but it would be warm and filling. I am Xavier Atwood. I work for the Circle K Ranch about 10 miles east of here." "I am Sophia Vance," the first girl said. "This is my sister, Serena." "Pleased to meet you, though I wish it were under better circumstances," Xavier said. He set about making coffee, grateful for something to do with his hands. "What were you two doing out here alone? Where were you headed?" Sophia and Serena exchanged a glance, some silent communication passing between them the way it often did with twins. Finally, Sophia spoke. "We were going to Del Rio," she said. "Our parents died 6 months ago, both of them from fever. We have an aunt there who said she would take us in. We sold almost everything we had to buy that wagon and horse, hired a guide to take us south from Denver." "What happened to the guide?" Xavier asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. Serena's face hardened. "He saw the storm coming and rode off, said he was going to scout ahead for shelter. That was 3 hours ago." "Left you," Xavier said flatly. It was not a question. "Yes," Sophia confirmed. "The horse got spooked when the wind really picked up, tipped the wagon into a ditch. By the time we got ourselves out, both the guide and our horse were gone." Xavier felt anger kindle in his chest, hot and fierce. What kind of man left 2 young women alone in a blizzard? But he kept his voice even as he poured coffee into 2 tin cups and handed them to the girls. "Drink this," he said. "It will warm you from the inside." They accepted gratefully, wrapping their hands around the cups. Xavier poured himself some as well and sat down in one of the chairs, suddenly aware of how tired he was. He had been out checking the fence lines when the storm rolled in faster than the morning sky had promised. "How bad is your ankle?" he asked Serena. She flexed her foot carefully under the blanket. "Not broken, I think, just twisted. It hurts, but I can move it." "Good," Xavier said. "We will be stuck here until the storm passes. Could be a day, could be 3. I have enough supplies for all of us if we are careful." "We have some money," Sophia said quickly. "Not much, but we can pay you for the food and shelter." Xavier waved her off. "No need, out here we help each other. That is just how it is." The wind continued to scream outside, rattling the door and finding every crack in the walls to whistle through. But inside, the fire was warm and the coffee was hot, and Xavier could see the color returning to the twins' faces. "Tell me about Del Rio," he said, partly to make conversation and partly because he was curious. "What is waiting for you there besides your aunt?" Sophia smiled for the first time, and Xavier was surprised by how it transformed her face. "A new start," she said. "We have been living in our parents' house in Denver, but there were too many memories there. Too much sadness. Our aunt owns a boarding house in Del Rio, and she said she could use help running it." "Del Rio is a good town," Xavier said. He had been there several times to drive cattle to the rail yards. "Growing fast with the railroad coming through. Your aunt is smart to have a boarding house there." "Have you lived in Colorado long?" Serena asked. She had been quieter than her sister, but now she seemed to be warming up, literally and figuratively. 6 years, Xavier said. "Came out from Missouri after my father died. He left me enough money to get west, but not enough to buy land. So I work cattle for other men and save what I can. Someday I will have my own spread." "That sounds like a good dream," Sophia said softly. They talked as the storm raged on, sharing stories to pass the time. Xavier learned that the twins had never been farther than 50 miles from Denver before this trip. That Sophia loved to read and Serena loved to cook. That they had been inseparable their entire lives. In turn, he told them about life on the range, about the hard work and the long days, but also about the satisfaction of it, the freedom of living under the big sky. As evening came on, the light through the single small window faded to gray and then to black. Xavier lit a lamp and pulled out the supplies for a meager dinner. Serena insisted on helping despite her ankle, and together they made a simple meal of beans and hardtack softened in the bean water. It was not fancy, but it was warm and filling. After they ate, Xavier gave the twins the cot and made himself a bed on the floor near the stove, using his saddle blanket and coat. He was used to sleeping rough, and it did not bother him. What bothered him was the growing awareness of how much he enjoyed the twins' company, particularly Sophia's. She had a way of looking at him when he spoke, giving him her full attention, that made him feel seen in a way he had not felt in a long time. But that was foolish thinking. They were traveling through, heading for a new life in Del Rio, and he was just a cowboy who happened to be in the right place at the right time. Once the storm passed, they would go their separate ways, and that would be that. Still, as he lay on the hard floor listening to the wind howl and the twins breathe softly in sleep, Xavier could not quite convince himself that he was ready for them to leave. The storm lasted 2 full days and nights. During that time, the three of them existed in a strange, suspended reality inside the line shack, cut off from the rest of the world by walls of white. Xavier kept the fire going and rationed their food carefully. The twins dried their clothes, and Serena's ankle healed enough for her to walk on it with only a slight limp. They talked constantly, as if trying to fill the small space with words to crowd out the howling wind. Xavier learned that Sophia had hoped to be a teacher before their parents died, that she loved poetry and could recite entire passages from memory. Serena confessed that she had always dreamed of opening her own restaurant, though she knew it was an impractical dream for a woman in 1882. "Why impractical?" Xavier asked. "I have seen women run businesses. My mother ran a dry goods store back in Missouri." "Really?" Serena's eyes lit up. "Did she enjoy it?" "She loved it," Xavier said. "Said it gave her purpose beyond just keeping house." "My father supported her in it too, which was unusual but good." "That gives me hope," Serena said quietly, on the second night after they had eaten their small dinner and were sitting around the stove. Sophia asked Xavier the question that had clearly been on both twins' minds. "Do you think our guide will come back for us?" Xavier considered lying, then decided they deserved the truth. "No," he said. "A man who leaves 2 women in a blizzard is not a man who comes back. I am sorry." "Do not be sorry for telling the truth," Sophia said. "We suspected as much." "What will you do?" Serena asked. "I mean, after the storm. Will you just leave us there by our wagon?" "Of course not," Xavier said, surprised that they would even think such a thing. "I will take you to Del Rio myself. It is only about 30 miles south of here, and the Circle K is on the way. I can collect my things and tell my boss I am taking a few days. He owes me time anyway." The relief on both twins' faces was palpable. "Thank you," Sophia said. "We have money for train tickets, but our luggage, everything we own, it is in that wagon. We will get it," Xavier promised. Soon as the storm breaks. That night, Xavier woke to the sound of crying, soft, muffled sobs coming from the direction of the cot. He sat up carefully, not wanting to startle anyone. "Sophia," he said quietly. The crying stopped abruptly. "I am sorry," came Sophia's whisper. "I did not mean to wake you." "You did not," Xavier lied. He stood and moved closer, able to see in the dim light from the banked fire that Sophia was sitting up on the cot while Serena slept beside her. "What is wrong?" "Nothing," Sophia said then. "Everything. I am just scared." About what comes next. About whether we are making the right choice. About whether our aunt will really want us or if we are just a burden she is taking on out of duty. Xavier sat down in the chair near the cot, his voice gentle. "Fear of the unknown is natural, but you are brave, both of you. You are making a new life for yourselves instead of giving up. That takes courage." "I do not feel brave," Sophia said. "I feel like a child playing at being grown up. Before our parents died, we had never had to make real decisions about anything. Now every choice feels enormous and terrifying." "That is what being grown up is," Xavier said with a small smile. "We are all just doing the best we can and hoping it works out." Sophia wiped at her eyes. "You seem so certain of everything, like you always know what to do." "I do not," Xavier admitted. "I just try to think things through and trust my instincts, and I ask for help when I need it, which is something a lot of men are too proud to do." "Will you help us?" Sophia asked suddenly. "Not just getting to Del Rio, but will you help us understand what we need to do to survive out here? We know nothing about this part of the world, about how to navigate it." "Of course," Xavier said without hesitation. "Whatever you need." Sophia reached out impulsively and took his hand. Her fingers were warm and small in his calloused palm. "You are a good man, Xavier Atwood." Xavier felt something shift in his chest, a warmth that had nothing to do with the fire. He looked at Sophia in the dim light, at her tear-stained face and determined eyes, and realized with a jolt that he was falling for her. It was too fast, too soon, too impractical. They had known each other for barely 2 days, but the heart did not care about logic or timing. He squeezed her hand gently, then released it. "Try to sleep," he said. "Tomorrow the storm should break and we will need our strength." Sophia nodded and lay back down, curling close to her sister for warmth. Xavier returned to his makeshift bed, but sleep was a long time coming. The storm broke on the morning of the 3rd day. Xavier woke to silence, that peculiar quiet that comes after days of constant wind. He got up and opened the door to a world transformed into white. Snow had drifted up against the shack nearly to the windows, and everything was covered in a thick blanket that sparkled in the weak morning sun. "We can leave today?" Serena asked, coming to stand beside him in the doorway. "We should," Xavier said. "The longer we wait, the harder it will be to dig out that wagon, and you need to get to your aunt in Del Rio." They ate a quick breakfast of the last of the coffee and hardtack. Then Xavier saddled Molly and helped the twins onto her back. He led the horse on foot, breaking trail through the snow. It was hard work, and more than once Molly sank up to her chest in a drift and had to be coaxed forward. They reached the overturned wagon by mid-morning. It looked even more forlorn, covered in snow, one wheel pointing at the sky and the rest buried. Xavier immediately set to work digging it out while the twins sorted through their belongings, checking what had survived the tip and the storm. "Most of it is all right," Sophia called out. "Some of the food got ruined and a few of the dishes broke, but our clothes and personal things are fine." Xavier finished digging out the wagon and examined it carefully. The axle was cracked, not broken, and one wheel was bent but still functional. It would not carry them all the way to Del Rio, but it might make it to the Circle K ranch. "We will load what we can carry onto the wagon and tie the rest to Molly," he decided. "I will walk alongside to keep the wagon steady. It is only about 7 miles to the ranch. We can get a better wagon there." It took them the better part of the afternoon to organize everything and get moving. The wagon creaked alarmingly with every turn of the wheels, but it held together. Xavier walked beside the mules that pulled it, having rounded up one of the ranch's teams that had been pastured nearby, while the twins sat on the seat, Serena holding the reins with Xavier's patient instruction. They reached the Circle K ranch just as the sun was setting, painting the snow in shades of pink and gold. Xavier's boss, a grizzled rancher named Tom Fletcher, came out of the main house as they approached. "Atwood," he called. "We thought you might have frozen to death out there." "Glad to see you made it. Got caught in the storm," Xavier explained. "Found these ladies in worse trouble than me. This is Sophia and Serena Vance. They are headed to Del Rio." Tom tipped his hat to the twins. "Welcome to the Circle K. Come inside and warm up. You can tell me the whole story over dinner." The ranch house was large and comfortable, and Tom's wife, a kind woman named Margaret, immediately took the twins under her wing. She insisted they have hot baths and loaned them fresh clothes while theirs were cleaned. Over a dinner of roast beef and potatoes, Xavier explained everything that had happened. "That guide should be horsewhipped," Tom said with disgust when he heard how the man had abandoned the twins. "You did right bringing them here, Xavier. They can stay as long as they need." "Thank you, but we should get to Del Rio as soon as possible," Sophia said. "Our aunt is expecting us. She is probably worried sick since we are overdue." "Understandable," Tom said. "Xavier, take one of the wagons and drive them there tomorrow. Take your time and do it right. Consider it paid time. Any man who rescues people from a blizzard has earned some consideration." "I appreciate that, sir," Xavier said, feeling grateful for his boss's generosity. That night, the twins were given a guest room in the house while Xavier bunked in the main bunkhouse with the other ranch hands. He lay awake on his cot, listening to the snoring and rustling around him, and thought about Sophia. About the way she had held his hand in the darkness, the way she looked at him, the way his heart seemed to beat faster whenever she was near. It was foolish. She was heading to Del Rio to start a new life. He was a cowboy with nothing but dreams and a little saved money. They had no future together, but telling himself that did not make the feelings go away. The next morning dawned clear and cold. Xavier prepared one of the ranch wagons, loading the twins' belongings and making sure everything was secure. Tom provided food for the journey and blankets to keep them warm. Margaret hugged both twins goodbye as if they were her own daughters. "You take care of yourselves," she said. "And Xavier, you take care of them." "Yes, madam," Xavier promised. The journey to Del Rio took 2 days. They traveled slowly, stopping frequently to rest the horses and stretch their legs. Xavier taught the twins more about the country they were traveling through, pointing out landmarks and explaining how to navigate by the sun and stars. At night, they camped under the stars, and Xavier showed them how to build a proper campfire and what plants were safe to eat if you ever got lost. Sophia proved to be an eager student, asking questions about everything. Serena was more reserved but no less interested. They both seemed to be coming out of their shells the farther they got from Denver and the memories of their grief. On the second night, after Serena had fallen asleep wrapped in blankets by the fire, Sophia came to sit beside Xavier where he was keeping watch. "Can I ask you something personal?" She said quietly, "Of course. Why have you never married? You are handsome and kind and hardworking. Surely there must have been women interested in you." Xavier was taken aback by her directness, but decided to answer honestly. "I have been focused on building something for myself," he said. "I did not want to ask a woman to share a life of nothing but hard work and scraping by. I wanted to have something to offer first." "Some women might not care about that," Sophia said softly. "Some women might just want a good man, regardless of what he has in his pockets. Xavier looked at her, at the way the firelight played across her face, and felt his resolve weakening. "Sophia," he began, then stopped, not sure what to say. "You can tell me," she encouraged. "Whatever it is." "I have feelings for you," Xavier said, the words coming out in a rush. "I know it is too soon, that we barely know each other, that you are going to Del Rio to start a new life. I know all of that, but I needed to tell you the truth before we get there and I lose my chance." Sophia's eyes widened, but she did not pull away. Instead, she reached out and took his hand, just as she had in the line shack. "I have feelings for you too," she whispered. "So does Serena." Xavier blinked in surprise. "Serena," Sophia nodded. "We talked about it last night at the ranch. We both have been drawn to you from the moment you found us. We know it is unusual, maybe even wrong, but we cannot help how we feel. We have always shared everything, Xavier. We are so close that sometimes it feels like we are one person in two bodies. The idea of one of us being with you while the other is not, it feels impossible." Xavier sat back, his mind reeling. He had heard of such arrangements, though they were rare and certainly not spoken about in polite society. A man with two wives, or in this case, a man with twin sisters who could not bear to be separated. It went against everything conventional, and yet when he thought about it, really thought about it, Xavier found he was not opposed. He cared for both of them, though his feelings for Sophia were perhaps stronger simply because they had talked more. But Serena, with her quiet strength and fierce loyalty, she had worked her way into his heart too. The idea of making a life with both of them, of being the man they could depend on and build a future with, it felt right in a way that surprised him. "What are you saying exactly?" Xavier asked carefully. "I am saying that we love you," Sophia said, her voice trembling slightly. "Both of us. We know it is asking a lot, maybe too much. We know it is not conventional, but we are not conventional women, Xavier. We have lost everything and are building new lives from nothing. We want to build that life with you if you will have us." "We love you," came Serena's voice from the other side of the fire, and Xavier realized she had been awake and listening the whole time. Both twins were looking at him now, identical expressions of hope and fear on their beautiful faces. Xavier felt his heart expand in his chest, felt the rightness of this moment settle over him like a warm blanket. "I love you too," he said, looking from one to the other. "Both of you. I love you more than I have ever loved anything in my life." Sophia's face broke into a radiant smile, and she launched herself at him, wrapping her arms around his neck. Serena was right behind her, and suddenly Xavier had both twins in his arms, all three of them laughing and crying at the same time. "Are you sure?" Serena asked, pulling back to look at him. "Are you sure you can love us both equally? We would never want you to feel torn or to favor one of us over the other." "I am sure," Xavier said firmly. "You are a package deal, always have been. I would not want it any other way." They sat together by the fire, making plans and talking about the future. Xavier explained that they could not legally marry all three of them, but they could have a private ceremony, something just for them that would bind them together in their hearts if not in the law. The twins agreed eagerly. "What about your aunt?" Xavier asked. "You were supposed to go work for her in Del Rio." "We will still go," Sophia said. "We can work for her until you have saved enough to buy that land you want. Then we can all build a home together." "Or," Serena said thoughtfully, "we could open that restaurant I have always dreamed about. Del Rio is growing. There is opportunity there." "We will figure it out together," Xavier said. "All three of us as a team." They arrived in Del Rio the next afternoon. The town was indeed growing, with new buildings going up on every street and people from all over coming to seek their fortunes now that the railroad was there. The twins' aunt, A formidable woman named Dorothy Vance ran a boarding house on the main street. She was overjoyed to see her nieces, having feared the worst when they did not arrive on schedule. "We ran into some trouble," Sophia explained, then introduced Xavier and told an edited version of their story, leaving out the part about their unconventional love arrangement. Dorothy took one look at the way the twins stayed close to Xavier, the way they all looked at each other, and a knowing smile crossed her face. "I see," she said. "Well, young man, I hope you know what you are getting into. These two together are a force of nature." "I am beginning to understand that, madam," Xavier said with a grin. "You have a place to stay?" Dorothy asked him. "I will find something," Xavier said, but Dorothy waved him off. "Nonsense, I have rooms. You will stay here until you all figure out your next steps. Any friend of my niece's is welcome in my house." So Xavier took a room at the boarding house, and over the next few weeks, they all settled into a new routine. The twins worked for their aunt during the day, helping to cook and clean and manage the guests. Xavier found work at a nearby ranch, similar to his job at the Circle K but closer to town. In the evenings, they would all have dinner together, and then Xavier would walk with the twins through the streets of Del Rio, talking and laughing and falling more deeply in love with each passing day. They kept their relationship quiet, knowing that most people would not understand. But Dorothy knew, and she supported them, which meant everything to the twins. She could see how happy they were, how Xavier treated them both with equal respect and affection, and she gave them her blessing. 2 months after arriving in Del Rio, Xavier proposed properly. He took both twins on a picnic by the river on a sunny Sunday afternoon and got down on one knee in front of both of them. "Sophia Vance and Serena Vance," he said, his voice shaking with emotion, "will you marry me? Both of you together, as we have been since the day I found you in that storm. Will you build a life with me, have children with me, grow old with me? I do not have much to offer yet except my whole heart and my promise to love you and care for you for the rest of my days. But if that is enough, then I am yours." "Yes," Sophia cried, throwing her arms around him. "Yes," Serena echoed, joining her sister. Xavier produced 2 simple gold bands that he had bought with his saved money. He slipped one on each of their fingers, and they did the same for him, a ring they had gone together to purchase. It was not a legal ceremony, but it was binding in their hearts, and that was what mattered. They were married in a small private ceremony performed by a sympathetic minister that Dorothy knew, a man who had unorthodox views about love and relationships. He blessed their union and prayed for their happiness, and Xavier felt more married in that moment than any legal document could have made him feel. The 3 of them continued to live at the boarding house for the time being, taking 2 adjoining rooms that they could move between freely. It was not perfect, but it worked. And Xavier was true to his word, treating both wives with equal love and attention, never favoring one over the other. Sophia bloomed under Xavier's love, her natural vivacity returning now that she was no longer weighed down by grief. She started teaching reading and writing to some of the children in town, using one of the rooms at the boarding house as a makeshift schoolroom. Serena began cooking more elaborate meals at the boarding house, and Dorothy's guests raved about the food. Word spread, and soon people were coming just for Serena's cooking. Xavier worked hard and saved every penny he could, determined to build a real future for his unusual little family. He took on extra jobs when he could, fixed fences and broke horses, and did anything that paid well. His reputation as a hard worker and honest man spread throughout Del Rio. One evening about 6 months after their private wedding, Sophia came to Xavier with news that made his heart soar. "I am with child," she said, her face glowing with joy. Xavier picked her up and spun her around, both of them laughing. Serena joined them, hugging them both, her own eyes shining with happy tears. "We are going to be parents," Xavier said in wonder. "We are going to need our own place," Serena pointed out practically. "The boarding house is wonderful, but it is not right for raising a baby." Xavier nodded. He had been thinking the same thing. "I have been saving," he said. "I have almost enough to buy a plot of land on the edge of town. It is not much, just a few acres, but it is enough to build a house and maybe have a small garden. We could do it if we are all willing to work hard." "Of course we are willing," Sophia said. "Let us do it. Let us build our home." They bought the land the following month. It was on the southern edge of Del Rio, far enough out to have space but close enough to walk to town. Xavier designed a house that would suit their needs, larger than a typical home, because it needed to accommodate their unusual family structure. He worked on it every spare moment, and the twins helped when they could, as did Dorothy and several of the boarding house regulars who had grown fond of the little family. The house took shape slowly but surely. It had 4 bedrooms, a large kitchen for Serena, and a parlor where Sophia could have her books. There was a wide front porch where they could sit in the evenings and watch the sun set over the plains. Xavier built it all with his own hands, every board and nail a labor of love. They moved into the house when Sophia was 7 months pregnant. It was still not completely finished, but it was livable and it was theirs. The first night they spent in their own home, all 3 of them sat on the porch and watched the stars come out. "We did it," Serena said softly. "We built something real." "We are just getting started," Xavier said, pulling both his wives close. "This is just the beginning." Sophia gave birth to a healthy baby boy on a warm spring morning in 1883. They named him Thomas Xavier Atwood, after Xavier's boss at the Circle K who had shown them such kindness. The baby had his father's dark hair and his mother's green eyes, and Xavier fell in love with him the moment he held the tiny bundle in his arms. Both Sophia and Serena mothered the baby equally. Sophia nursed him, but Serena cared for him with just as much devotion, rocking him to sleep and singing him lullabies. To the outside world, they simply said that Serena was helping her sister, which was true enough. Behind closed doors, they were all 3 raising Thomas together as a united family. 6 months after Thomas was born, Serena discovered she too was pregnant. Xavier was overjoyed, as was Sophia. The twins had worried that one of them having a child before the other might cause jealousy or division, but if anything, it brought them closer together. "Now our babies will grow up together, almost like twins themselves," Sophia said happily. Serena gave birth to a daughter they named Rose Sophia Atwood. She had Serena's quiet demeanor but Sophia's bright smile, and she was perfect in every way. Xavier now had 2 children, one from each of his wives, and his heart felt so full he thought it might burst. The years that followed were full and happy. Xavier's reputation as a skilled horseman and cattleman grew, and he was able to take on more and better paying work. Serena opened a small restaurant in town, just 3 tables in a rented space, but it was hers and it was successful. Sophia continued to teach, expanding her little school until she had nearly 20 students. They had 2 more children over the next 5 years, another son from Serena named James, and another daughter from Sophia named Elizabeth. The house that had seemed large when they built, it now felt cozy and full, brimming with the noise and chaos and love of a large family. Dorothy remained a constant presence in their lives, visiting often and doting on her great-nieces and great-nephews. She never remarried after her husband's death years ago, and she said that the twins and their family filled her life with all the love and purpose she needed. People in Del Rio knew that the Atwood family was unusual, but over time, they had become so much a part of the community that no one questioned it anymore. Xavier was respected, the twins were beloved, and their children were just children, playing and learning and growing like all the others. On a warm summer evening in 1890, Xavier sat on the porch of the house he had built with his own hands, watching his 4 children play in the yard. Thomas was 7 now, a serious boy who loved horses and wanted to be a rancher like his father. Rose was 6, quiet and thoughtful, always reading when she could find a book. James was 4, a bundle of energy who was constantly getting into mischief. And Elizabeth was 3, a little princess who had both her mother's and her father wrapped around her tiny finger. Sophia came out and sat beside Xavier, leaning her head on his shoulder. Serena followed a moment later, sitting on his other side. They sat in comfortable silence, watching their children, listening to their laughter. "You remember that blizzard?" Sophia asked softly. "When you found us?" "Every day," Xavier said. "Best storm of my life." "We were so scared," Serena said. "We thought we were going to die out there in that cold." "Then you appeared like an angel," Sophia added, "saving us." "You saved me too," Xavier said, putting an arm around each of his wives. "I was just going through the motions before I met you, working and saving but not really living. You two taught me what it means to truly live, to love completely and without reservation." "We love you," Sophia said. "We love you," Serena echoed. Xavier pulled them both closer, feeling the familiar warmth of their bodies against his. "I love you more," he said, the words that had become their little ritual over the years. "Not possible," Sophia protested with a laugh. "Definitely not possible," Serena agreed. "I do though," Xavier insisted. "I love you more than the sky is wide, more than the grass is green, more than there are stars in the heavens." The twins laughed and kissed him, one on each cheek, and Xavier felt the same surge of contentment and gratitude that he felt every day of his life with them. As the sun set and painted the sky in brilliant shades of orange and pink, Xavier called the children in for dinner. They all trooped inside, a noisy, happy procession, and sat around the large table that Xavier had built to fit their growing family. Serena had made a roast with potatoes and carrots, and the smell filled the house with warmth. They held hands around the table while Xavier said grace, thanking God for the food and for each other, for the blessings of health and home and love. Then they ate together, talking and laughing, the children chattering about their day. After dinner, Sophia read to the children from a book of fairy tales while Serena and Xavier cleaned up the kitchen together. It was a routine they had fallen into over the years, each person contributing to the smooth running of the household. When the dishes were done, they all gathered in the parlor. Xavier played his guitar, an instrument he had taught himself over the years, while Sophia sang and Serena kept the beat. The children danced and clapped along. Later, after the children were in bed, Xavier sat with his wives in their bedroom. It was the master bedroom, large enough for the 3 of them, with a bed Xavier had specially made to accommodate them all comfortably. They talked about the day, about the children, about their plans for the future. "Thomas wants a horse of his own," Xavier said. "I am thinking about getting him one for his birthday." "That would make him so happy," Sophia said. "He follows you around like a little shadow. He worships you." "They all do," Serena added. "You are such a good father, Xavier." "Better than I ever dared to hope for." Xavier felt emotion tighten his throat. "I am only good because of you too," he said. "You make me want to be better, to be worthy of you and the children." "You are worthy," Sophia said firmly. "Do not ever doubt that." They talked late into the night, as they often did, about everything and nothing. About Rose's quiet nature, and whether they should encourage her to be more outgoing or let her be herself. About James's boundless energy and how to channel it constructively. About Elizabeth's stubborn streak that was equal parts endearing and frustrating. About business, about money, about the future. "I was thinking," Serena said slowly, "that maybe we could expand the restaurant. There is a larger space available on Main Street and business has been so good. We could hire help and really make something of it." "That is a wonderful idea," Xavier said. "You have the skill and the reputation. I think you could make it work." "I could help with the books," Sophia offered, "managing the money and orders and such. I have been looking for a way to contribute more financially now that the children are getting older and need me less." They made plans, dreaming together the way they had since that first night by the campfire when they had confessed their love. Xavier had learned over the years that this was one of the secrets to their success as a family. They communicated constantly, made decisions together, supported each other's dreams and ambitions. The restaurant expansion happened the following year. Serena's Eatery, as it was officially called, moved to a larger location and hired 3 employees. It quickly became the most popular restaurant in Del Rio, known for delicious food and generous portions. Sophia managed the business side with quiet efficiency, and Xavier helped out when he could, though his primary work remained ranching and horses. The children grew and thrived. Thomas indeed got his horse for his 8th birthday and proved to be a natural horseman like his father. Rose discovered a love of music and began learning piano from a teacher in town. James showed an aptitude for building things, always constructing elaborate projects from whatever materials he could find. Elizabeth charmed everyone she met with her infectious laugh and generous spirit. Xavier bought more land as they could afford it, gradually building up a small ranch of their own. He raised horses primarily, breeding and training them, and developed a reputation throughout southern Colorado for producing quality animals. The work was hard but satisfying, and he loved being able to pass his knowledge on to Thomas and James as they got older. Sophia's school continued to grow as well. She eventually had so many students that she had to rent a proper building and hire another teacher to help her. She taught reading, writing, arithmetic, history, and geography, preparing children for the wider world beyond Del Rio. Many of her students went on to attend universities or become successful business people, and they always credited Mrs. Atwood with giving them the foundation they needed. The twins remained as close as ever, finishing each other's sentences and seeming to communicate without words. They continued to share Xavier equally, never showing jealousy or favoritism. Their unconventional arrangement had simply become their normal, and the children grew up thinking nothing of it. To them, having 2 mothers who were also sisters was just how their family worked. Dorothy passed away peacefully in her sleep in 1895, at the age of 73. The twins were heartbroken, as was Xavier. She had been a surrogate mother to him and the beloved grandmother figure to their children. They buried her in the Del Rio cemetery under a spreading cottonwood tree, and Xavier made sure her gravestone was the finest marble he could afford. It read, "Dorothy Ann Vance, beloved aunt and friend, she opened her heart and her home to all who needed it." The loss brought the family even closer together, reminding them of how precious and fragile life was. Xavier made sure to tell his wives every single day that he loved them, and they did the same. They made a point of having family dinners every night no matter how busy they were, of spending Sundays together, of creating memories that would last a lifetime. As the new century approached, Xavier found himself reflecting on how far they had all come. From that desperate night in the blizzard to this full, rich life they had built together. He was 44 years old now, still strong and healthy, but feeling his age in the way his back ached after a long day's work. Sophia and Serena were 41, and Xavier thought they were more beautiful now than they had been as young women. Age had given them grace and wisdom, had added laugh lines around their eyes that he found endearing. Thomas was 17, a young man now who worked the ranch alongside his father and talked about one day taking it over. Rose was 16, engaged to be married to a young man who worked at the bank, a quiet fellow who treated her with the kindness and respect she deserved. James was 14, already taller than his father and showing promise as a builder and craftsman. Elizabeth was 13, on the cusp of young womanhood, still bright and cheerful but beginning to show signs of the serious, thoughtful person she would become. On New Year's Eve, as 1899 turned to 1900, the whole family gathered on their porch to watch fireworks that the town was setting off in celebration of the new century. Xavier stood with an arm around each of his wives. Their children gathered around them and felt such overwhelming gratitude that tears pricked his eyes. "What are you thinking?" Sophia asked softly, noticing his emotion. "Just that I am the luckiest man alive," Xavier said. "That I found you too in that storm, that you loved me back, that we built all of this together. It is more than I ever dreamed possible." "We are the lucky ones," Serena said. "You gave us a home and a family and a life full of love. That is all we ever wanted." "We love you," Sophia said. "We love you," Serena repeated. "I love you more," Xavier said, his voice thick with emotion. The children groaned good-naturedly at their parents' familiar refrain, but they were smiling. They had heard those words exchanged countless times over the years, and it made them feel safe and secure, knowing their parents loved each other so much. As the fireworks exploded overhead, painting the night sky in brilliant colors, Xavier held his wives close and watched his children's faces light up with wonder. This moment, right here, was everything. This was what he had worked for, what they had all built together through hard work and dedication and unwavering love. The years continued to pass, bringing both joy and sorrow as all lives do. Rose married her banker and gave Xavier and his wives their first grandchild, a daughter they named Dorothy after her great-great-aunt. Thomas married a rancher's daughter from a neighboring property and brought her into the family business, expanding the horse operation even further. James went to Denver to study architecture, but he returned to Del Rio after completing his education and began designing buildings throughout southern Colorado. Elizabeth became a teacher like Sophia, working at her mother's school and eventually taking it over when Sophia decided to retire. More grandchildren came, filling the house with noise and laughter once again. Xavier built onto the house, adding more rooms to accommodate the growing family when they all came for Sunday dinners and holidays. Serena's restaurant thrived, and she eventually opened a second location. Sophia published a book about education that was used in schools throughout Colorado. Xavier's horses became known throughout the West, and people came from as far away as California to buy his animals. Through it all, the three of them remained devoted to each other. They weathered illnesses and setbacks, celebrated triumphs and milestones, and never wavered in their commitment to their unusual but beautiful union. They had created something rare and precious, a love that defied convention but was as strong and real as any marriage could be. As Xavier grew older, his body began to slow down in the way that bodies do. His back ached more, his knees creaked, his hair turned silver. But Sophia and Serena remained at his side, aging alongside him with grace and beauty. They had all earned their gray hair and wrinkles, badges of a life well lived. On a warm spring day in 1915, Xavier celebrated his 63rd birthday surrounded by his children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. The house and yard were full of family, 3 generations of Atwoods who all existed because a cowboy had found 2 sisters in a blizzard 33 years earlier. Thomas made a speech, thanking his father for teaching him how to be a man, how to work hard and love deeply and treat others with respect. Rose spoke about her father's gentle kindness and how he had always made her feel special. James talked about his father's creativity and problem-solving skills. Elizabeth simply said that her father was her hero, and she hoped to find a love like his someday. Xavier was deeply moved by his children's words, but he knew that any credit for how they turned out had to be shared with Sophia and Serena. They were the ones who had nurtured and guided, who had bandaged scraped knees and soothed broken hearts, who had taught their children values and morals and how to be good people. That evening, after everyone had gone home and it was just the 3 of them again, Xavier sat on the porch with his wives just as they had done countless times before. The sun was setting, painting the sky in familiar shades of orange and pink. "We did all right, did we not?" Xavier said softly. "We did more than all right," Sophia said. "We created something beautiful." "A legacy," Serena agreed. "Not just children and grandchildren, but a way of loving that will echo through generations. Our grandchildren are learning from us that love comes in many forms, that family is what you make it, that convention matters less than commitment." "You two are the loves of my life," Xavier said. "I want you to know that. Every day with you has been a gift." "We feel the same," Sophia said, taking his hand. "Always," Serena added, taking his other hand. They sat together in comfortable silence, watching the stars come out one by one, just as they had done thousands of times before and would do thousands of times more. They had built a life together that was rich and full and overflowing with love. They had survived blizzards, both literal and metaphorical. They had created a family that was unconventional but strong. Xavier thought back to that terrified young man leading a horse through a blizzard, risking his own life to save 2 strangers. He thought about the courage it had taken for Sophia to confess her feelings that night by the campfire, the bravery of all 3 of them in choosing to build a life together, despite what society might think. He thought about all the moments, big and small, that had brought them to this point. "Do you have any regrets?" he asked his wives suddenly. "Not a single one," Sophia said firmly. "None," Serena agreed. "This life we built together is exactly what I would choose if I could live it all over again." "Me too," Xavier said. "I love you both more than words can express." "We love you," they said in unison, then laughed at the synchronicity that still happened after all these years. "I love you more," Xavier insisted with a smile. "We will agree to disagree on that," Sophia said, her eyes twinkling. They stayed on the porch until the night grew cold, then went inside to the house that love had built. They climbed the stairs to their bedroom, the room they had shared for over 30 years, and got ready for bed with the easy familiarity of people who knew each other inside and out. They lay down together, Xavier in the middle with a wife on each side as always, and drifted off to sleep holding hands. Xavier Atwood lived to the age of 76, passing away peacefully in his sleep in 1928 with Sophia and Serena beside him. His funeral was the largest Del Rio had ever seen, attended by hundreds of people whose lives he had touched. His children and grandchildren spoke of his kindness, his work ethic, his devotion to family, and his unconventional but beautiful love story. Sophia and Serena lived another 10 years after Xavier's death, their bond sustaining them through their grief. They continued to run the restaurant and school with help from their children, and they spent their days surrounded by family. When Sophia passed away in 1938 at the age of 79, Serena followed her just 3 days later. The twins who had shared everything in life, including the love of one good man, could not bear to be separated even in death. They were buried side by side with Xavier between them, 3 headstones marking 3 lives that had been intertwined so completely that they became one story. The epitaph Xavier had requested in his will was carved into all 3 stones. We loved each other more. The Atwood family continued to grow and thrive in the decades that followed. Thomas's grandchildren still ran the ranch, now one of the largest in southern Colorado. Serena's restaurant was still in operation, run by Elizabeth's daughter who had inherited her great-grandmother's talent for cooking. Rose's great-grandson became mayor of Del Rio. James's architectural firm was now run by his son and grandson, and their buildings could be found throughout the state. The story of Xavier, Sophia, and Serena became something of a legend in Del Rio. A tale told to illustrate that love comes in many forms, that courage means following your heart even when the world tells you not to, that the best families are built on commitment and respect rather than convention. It was a reminder that sometimes the most beautiful things in life come from the most unlikely circumstances, like finding love in the middle of a blizzard. And through it all, through all the generations that followed, the Atwood family carried forward the values that Xavier, Sophia, and Serena had instilled: hard work, kindness, loyalty, the courage to be different, and above all, the belief that love, true love, could overcome any obstacle. The house that Xavier built with his own hands still stood at the edge of Del Rio, now owned by his great-great-grandchildren. They kept it much as it had been, preserving it as a reminder of where they came from. On the porch where Xavier had sat with his wives countless times, there was now a swing. Children played in the yard where Thomas and Rose and James and Elizabeth once played. And sometimes, on quiet evenings, you could almost feel the presence of 3 people who loved each other more than anything, still watching over the family they had created. The legacy of that blizzard night in 1881 lived on, a testament to the power of love to transform lives, to build families, to create something beautiful and lasting out of what began as a desperate struggle for survival. Xavier Atwood had ridden out into a storm to save 2 strangers, never knowing that in doing so he would find his own salvation, his own happiness, his own forever. And in the end, that was what mattered. Not the unconventional nature of their relationship, not what anyone else thought or said, but the simple truth that they had loved each other deeply and completely, without reservation or regret. They had built a life together filled with laughter and joy, with children and grandchildren, with hard work and sweet reward. They had faced every challenge as a team and celebrated every triumph together. Their story was one of courage and commitment, of finding family in unexpected places, of love that defied definition. It was a reminder that the heart knows what it wants, and that sometimes the best thing you can do is follow it, no matter where it leads. Xavier had followed his heart that night in the blizzard, when he heard voices calling for help. Sophia and Serena had followed their hearts when they confessed their love by the campfire. And together, all 3 of them had followed their hearts in choosing to build a life together despite every reason not to. The results spoke for themselves. A family that grew and flourished, spreading love and light throughout southern Colorado for generations. A legacy of kindness and hard work and devotion that continued long after they were gone. A love story that became legend, inspiring others to be brave enough to follow their own hearts. As the sun set over Del Rio on another warm summer evening, casting the same shades of orange and pink across the sky that Xavier had loved so much. The current generation of Atwoods gathered at the old house for their weekly family dinner. Children ran through the yard, laughing and playing. Adults talked and worked together to prepare the meal. And somewhere in the midst of it all, the spirits of Xavier, Sophia, and Serena smiled, satisfied with what they had created, proud of the family they had begun. They had sheltered each other from more than just a blizzard. They had sheltered each other from loneliness, from grief, from a world that did not understand them. They had created a safe haven where love could flourish in all its forms. They had shown their children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren that family is not defined by convention, but by commitment. That love is not limited by rules, but only by the size of your heart. And when the stories were told around the dinner table that night, as they were told every week, the youngest Atwoods would hear once again about the cowboy who saved two sisters from a blizzard, about how they fell in love, about how they built a life together that lasted decades and echoed through generations. They would hear about courage and kindness, about hard work and dedication, about love that overcame every obstacle. And at the end of the story, someone would always say the words that had become the family motto, the phrase that summed up everything Xavier and Sophia and Serena had been to each other. We love you. We love you. I love you more. And the children would smile, understanding in their young hearts the simple truth that had started it all. That love, real love, the kind that builds families and creates legacies and lasts forever, is not about who loves more but about loving completely, without reservation, with your whole heart. That was the gift Xavier, Sophia, and Serena had given to their family. That was their legacy. And it lived on, generation after generation, a light that would never fade, a love that would never die, a story that would always inspire. The blizzard had long since passed, but the warmth they had created together remained, sheltering their descendants just as Xavier had once sheltered two frightened sisters from the cold. And that warmth would continue, passed from parent to child, from generation to generation, for as long as the Atwood family existed. It was a fitting end to a love story that had begun with a desperate cry for help in a storm, and had become something far greater than any of them could have imagined. Three people who had found each other against all odds, who had loved each other against all convention, who had built something beautiful and lasting together. Their story was complete, their legacy secure, their love eternal. And as the stars came out over Del Rio that night, shining down on the house that love built, the spirit of that love continued to shine just as brightly, a beacon for anyone brave enough to follow their heart into the storm.